Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Forced Proximity live stream. And I call it that because I am forcing some of my favorite romance authors to hang out with me because I adore them. And this is my way to be friends with them and to support their work and to share my love of them with you. And hopefully they can connect with some new readers and you can find some new romance books to love. So this is an ongoing series. I will be interviewing more romance authors in the future. So if you have any romance authors you'd like to see on the series, definitely make sure to add those in the comments and I will take your suggestions. Today, we have 2 lovely authors joining us that I'm so excited to talk to and I know you're going to love. Quick note, Sajni Patel is not joining us today, but I will reschedule something with her today. She is having some extreme weather issues, so we are just wishing her well wishes and safety for wherever she's at in the world, and we will connect with her another time. Anyhow, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Hannah. It's lovely to meet you. I read probably 80% romance at this point. I have been a book talker, bookstagrammer, and now booktuber for the last few years, and romance has taken over my life. I've started going to romance festivals, and I just can't stop reading romance. There's something so magical about it and so magical about the community, which is why I wanted to start this series. So I want to welcome these 2 very special guests to the stage. So let's give them a large virtual applause. First up, we've got Taj McCoy. Here we go this way. Yay! Oh. And here we go, Kyla Zhao. Yay!
Hi.
Welcome. So I've got little bios to read, which always feels awkward, I think, as like hearing someone else read about yourself. But I feel like it's really important because we don't really ever get the chance to like hear our own achievements back to us and hear about how awesome we are from a third-party person. So today I'm going to be that person. I'll be your hype girl.
Love it.
Starting with Taj. Taj specifically writes full-bodied, big-hearted, and beautifully diverse love stories. She believes in the power of food and wine and music to bring people together and is known for her contemporary romances that feature strong female characters navigating the complexities of love, family, and identity. Yeah. Also, I will say, I'm always hungry when I'm reading your books. I go get a snack literally every time. I'm like,
it's necessary. I tell people always, you must have snacks because the food starts on the first page.
It really does. It's like you started me on the tennis kick. That's where we kicked off. And then you got me with the snacks and I was locked in. With Kyla is actually from Singapore. So a Singaporean author who writes about the intricacies of love, identity, and belonging. Her work is known for sharp wit, emotional depth, and cultural authenticity. Kyla enjoys creating stories that not only entertain, but resonate with readers on a personal level. Yeah. And I have a little fun fact, actually. I'm going to grab these books because you can't see them back there anyways. But so I got to meet Taj recently and get my book signed in person, but not to be left out, Kyla, I have an autographed copy of your book.
Oh my gosh, no way.
I went to Annabelle's book club in LA like the week after you were there. And this is how I actually ended up discovering you, is because it was on her wall of favorites.
Oh yeah, I think you shot like a video there or something.
Yep.
And I saw it on Instagram. That's so cool.
Forever posting. I'm like, yep, that would be me. The one tagging you in your DMs constantly.
We love it though. We do.
Yeah, so this is our little company today. So I really like to make my streams and my events a little bit different, I think, than the standard, or as different as I can, put my own personal flair on it. But I think a lot of authors get interviewed for various, publications, and they go on other live streams and they go to book clubs and you get asked a lot of the same questions. And of course, some of those questions we're still going to want to ask because they're important. But I try to put my own spin by adding in games and making, the questions a little bit more interactive. All that being said, this is not that serious. It's very fun. It's supposed to be, a conversation about the romance genre and all about having readers, connect with who you are as a person beyond just the one book you're promoting at this point in time. Cool. All right. So let's start at the beginning, kind of where you guys began with the romance genre. I would want to know kind of what made you fall in love with romance? Like I was mentioning, I'm very invested now at this point in the romance genre. Like, were you stealing your mom's books? Were you at the library hiding? Where did it begin for you? And anyone can start.
You want to go, Kyla?
Sure. So I was brought up in a family and maybe a culture that didn't really encourage romance before you got to university. So, throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, it was like, don't think about boys, don't talk to boys, just focus on your studies, heads down, and you can worry about that later. And I think the more my parents told me not to do something, the more curious I got about it. And so romance novels for me was just like a window into another world, like a peek into a life that I know I wasn't supposed to have at that point. And I think I just like ate it all up. It was just so unusual to me because no one around me was getting into relationships. I wasn't. And so to read about these teenagers, like discovering first love, puppy love, second loves, it just gave me such big feelings at that time.
That's really special. Like those teenage hormones are crazy. So like you need somewhere to channel that energy. So I'm glad you discovered them and kind of had that outlet. How about for you, Taj?
Yeah, well, I'm older than both of you. So for me, in childhood, like there really wasn't a super developed YA or, back then. And so for I want to say I went straight from like reading Babysitter's Club to like Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, and then I think I read It, and then I went straight from that into romance at 10 years old. So I started, I think the very first ones that I read were like Victoria Hoyt and Elizabeth Holt and like Regency kind of stuff, and I had no idea what was happening. But there was something about it that I just found really addicting. And so I have read romance far longer than I should have. But it always brought me comfort and joy. And I loved seeing the dynamics of how relationships worked and failed and then worked again. And so it's just been something that I've had a really fun time exploring. I think I attempted my first romance novels in law school. And so it's just been there, present since I was a kid.
It's interesting. I feel like that's like a common thread. The more I ask this kind of question and hear people's stories is like, we all discovered them at a younger age than we should have probably, but like it all brought us to like a great place, like I don't think for all of the censoring that people try to do for their children, it doesn't seem as necessary because I've met so many wonderful people who started romance at a young age. I can relate with Kyla's story a bit. I grew up super religious and I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I was like very, very sheltered. I like very much lived under a rock. My mom was a big garage sailor, so she would buy tons of books. And so books were like my one way to the outside world because I couldn't even hang out with kids from school. I wasn't allowed to. So I was like, how do I get to like learn about other people? Mm-hmm. And my mom would buy these random books and she had romance. So, I don't think she realized I was reading these, but she had some of those like mass market, and I feel like they were always Western romances. I should ask her about this now that we're all adults here, but had a type. And I definitely poured over those very secretly in my room.
I think I did it in public. I didn't care. Like my mom, like I think so I was a really, really avid reader from very, very young, and I think I was at like a 10th grade reading level in second grade. And so they just knew I was just going to go and explore whatever. And it just kind of was what it was. They weren't going to stop me. And so when we would go to the library, we went weekly and I would take the max out every week. I would get 10 books and I would read through all of them before we got back the next Friday. And so like, I think my mom was like, wait, is that Danielle Steele? Yeah. Is that Nora Roberts? Yeah. And it would like sometimes they were like the Fabio covers and, all of those like old school things that you guys probably never really got to see a whole lot of when you were young. But, like it was a lot of fun to just kind of get a sense of, so many of those old Western ones were so adventurous and, like, so you just got to kind of see different parts of the world and life in general. And I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like I'm like, now I'm like therapizing myself here, but I feel like having that outlet of seeing how different relationships worked, it was really important because like my parents aren't together now and didn't necessarily grow up with them having this strong relationship. So being able to read about other people's love stories on paper at such a young age, I think was actually probably really, I don't know, like hopeful for me, you know, being able to see like, oh, other happy couples do exist in the world and this is how they navigate, whether it's fictional or not. I was like, oh, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
I actually had a slightly different experience. So I think my first memory of romance novels was actually the Sweet Valley Twin series. I don't know if you both know it.
Yeah.
So I read the Twin series and then I read about them in middle school, then high school, then university, and then later on. And it was just some of the most toxic relationships you could possibly imagine. And I read all of that and I was like, wow, is this what American love stories are like? And I was fascinated. I was like, these American teenagers, they are wild. And then I got to America and I was like, nothing's quite like this. But at a young age, I was fascinated by Jessica and Elizabeth and, you know, all the boys that they were with.
Yeah, I think I met Francine Pascal when I was in like 9 or 10, and she did a signing in the Bay Area. And so she signed my Sweet Valley High saga book. And so I was there like as those were coming out.
Wow.
So, like, but she was on book tour, and I'd already been published, and so like I was telling her I wanted to be a writer, and she was giving me advice, and you know, it's one of those formative things that you just never forget. She was the first author I ever met.
Wow.
That's super cool. I definitely I have older sisters and they had like the full series. So I was reading all their books, those. And specifically, I remember probably because I'm traumatized, they had Lurleen McDaniel's books. Every plot point in those books is just trauma porn. Like every book is just someone dies. It's very tragic. You'll cry every single time. And it's just,
I have at least 2 up here somewhere.
They are heavy. I don't know if I could revisit them as an adult. I just remember like crying as like a teenager, and I was like, this is a lot.
There was one that I think I read it like 6 or 7 times. Like there was just something about it and the relationship between the 2 people before the kid dies that you're like, you know, like there was something I loved about their friendship. And so I was just like, you know, like maybe she'll write one someday where they don't die.
I don't think she did. I don't think so.
Eventually I gave up and went to something more joyful, but there was definitely, you know, I think we all have that teenage angsty kind of period, and it fit right in for me then.
All the big feels. All right, I would love to talk about each of your most recent releases. And I've found from the last episode of this series that a really fun way to do it, because everyone kind of gives the same elevator pitch over and over. And I'm sure you're sick of saying it in the same ways and, you know, blurting it the same way. So instead, if you would talk about it from the point of view of your main character. So, you know, using first person, you'd be like, I blah, 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 am going through this. Sure. And I feel like it's very fun to hear about in that way. It makes me like really want to read a book when it feels like it's happening to you. So I really enjoy it this way.
No, I love this idea. So my name is Maggie, and my best friends are both getting married. I'm not bitter, but whatever. And so here's the situation. They both asked me to be their maid of honor. I have to find a date, and I really don't want to. I went through a breakup a few months ago, and I just feel like I could just go with my best friend Garrett, and it could be fine. But they're insistent, and they even went so far as to make me an online profile. So now I'm on these dates, and they suck. And all of a sudden, I'm at the gym doing what I do, you know, gains. And so, like, in doing so, I meet this really sexy surgeon, and he is almost everything. He checks a lot of the boxes on my list. Maybe not all, but it's worth exploring. And as I explore, Garrett lets me know he's actually been in love with me since college, and now I don't know what to do.
Dun, dun, dun.
That was really good.
That was really good. She practiced.
I really didn't practice. It could be fun to do that for like a reel, though.
It is fun. I know people that like are very good at acting have done that, and you kind of like you start to believe it, and then they're like, and if you want to know what happens next,
right? Exactly. I've definitely fallen for it a few times.
Me too. All right. Ready, Kyla?
No, but I'll try.
Just do your best. It's not that
okay. That was a tough act to follow, but okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm a fashion writer in the Big Apple, but because of my funds running low and New York City just being too expensive to live in, I'm forced to take up a new job at a tech startup in Silicon Valley. So I pack up my bags, fly across the country, and find myself in a new place, in a new industry where I know no one. My only job here is to keep my head down, try to do my job, and make sure that this startup succeeds so that I can say I succeeded. There's only 5 other people at this startup. It's a really small place, and everyone just seems so different from back home. But there's also this new guy at work, and he's kind of dark and brooding, and he doesn't talk very much. He seems helpful enough, but I don't know. There's just something about him that really catches my eye. But no, I'm here to work. There's no room for feelings. There's no room for anything else, and I cannot mess this up for myself. Yeah, that was that.
No, it was great. I would be sold if I had read it already. I've already read it, so. No, that was perfect. I love that. You're like, no, but actually we're focusing. No men. Yeah. As we all know. That was great. All right. Imagine with each of these books, if they were to be adapted, if you had anyone kind of maybe in mind while you were writing them, or maybe, you know, now that they've been out in the world for a little bit, you've had readers fan cast them, or, you know, names come up. I'm curious if there's anyone that has came to mind to be adapted.
So I actually kind of base likenesses of my characters off of actors in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So Maggie is Danielle Brooks from The Color Purple. Mm-hmm. Blake, the doctor, is Michael B. Jordan, and you can recognize him if you look.
I was wondering.
And then Garrett is Yahya Abdul-Mateen, whom I find very sexy and I think could make for a really good friends to lovers kind of love interest.
I like it. Yeah. I will say, I also like how in your books you describe voices really well. I just thought about that. Like, it's not just the looks, because I think, you know, it's not always all about the looks, but that's one thing you describe as like really iconic people's voices. Like, in one of your characters has a very Denzel voice. And
yeah.
Like, yes,
but I love that though, like, because I feel like, you know, if we're going to talk about how the food tastes and how different settings feel and what people look like, then let's also, I want to know what they sound like, you know, how, if we're dating 2 different people, you have to get a sense of, you know, being able to distinguish the 2. And so I try to do that by making their voices really distinct.
I love that. You got anyone in mind, Kyla?
Yeah, so not really an actor, but more like a fictional character. So I don't know if you guys know the show Never Have I Ever. I think it's on Netflix. I love it. And there's this one character called, I believe she's called Eleanor, and she just has this really funky, quirky, vibrant dressing style. And that's what I had in mind when I was crafting my main character, Zoe. She has a louder-than-life closet. You know, she doesn't shy back from wearing bold colors, bold prints, and patterns. And that might stand out a little bit in a place like Silicon Valley, where, you know, everyone's just dressed in like polo shirts and Patagonia jackets, right? And I think in a way that reflects her fish out of water persona, that, you know, there are a lot of times when she feels like she doesn't fit in and that she might have to just shuck away parts of herself so that she blends in. And that's just a character journey that she has to go through.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys seen the movie Me Before You? Mm-hmm. There's the main character dresses very much like this. And she is kind of like style-wise who I thought of, where it's almost like a heightened version of Jessica Day, but like a little bit more high fashion, you know, just like really bold, a lot of patterns, very colorful. Just like every room she steps into is super loud, you know, and I really love that. I think it's super cool.
I have to look that up.
Even just to see the pictures, and I feel like you'll be like, yep, I see it.
Yeah.
All right. So now we are at the point of the first game. So it's very, very easy one. We're starting off very tame here, but I'm going to give you a little hint and you're going to guess which romance trope it is. And I'm not very creative today, so these hints are pretty easy.
Okay.
All right. So the first hint for this trope is sharing is caring. I'll get more descriptive if we have no guesses, but I wanted to start big.
Sharing is caring. Only one bed?
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty easy.
I was
I
thinking
was
something
like,
completely
two travelers in one room. It's already too easy. So.
Okay. I was thinking
Okay.
like reverse harem for some reason, but no, sharing
She's
a
like,
bit
"Really
makes way
going
more sense.
I
Okay.
mean, they're technically sharing at that point, so
Yeah.
it
True,
works
that
too.
could have worked. All right. Often one of these characters thinks that the other is the worst.
Enemies to lovers?
Pretty easy. He's planning forever. She's wondering what's for dinner.
Cinnamon roll hero?
It could be close to that, but
He's planning forever. She's wondering what's for dinner.
Sunshine and Grumpy, kind of.
kind of, but he falls first.
Okay.
Ah,
Just listing some of my favorites.
Fair. That's cute.
Mhm. Let's see. The stakes are high, but the baggage is heavier. Okay, maybe I did make these hard.
The only thing that comes to mind is Secret Baby, and I'm like, oh god.
Nope.
I mean, that would be some baggage.
some sort of billionaire romance. I feel like the billionaires are always tortured.
It's
So,
a second chance.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of big. Could have worked. Two more. So he was reading textbooks while she was listening to mixtapes.
some nerd romance. I don't know.
I'm lost.
Age gap.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. That was kind of hard. I got one more, and I think maybe Kyla will get this one. This time it's his wallet that's heavy, but his heart, let's say, under construction.
Oh, billionaire romance.
There you go. I was like, we have that one on the list. Perfect. So those are some of the tropes that I like. So I thought we would throw them in there and have a little fun.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of tropes, we often play with different tropes, of course, in the romance genre. And I know this is always like a hot topic, and everyone's like, why are we marketing with tropes? But also, how else do you market a romance book? And how do you describe a romance book without giving everything away? And a lot of these tropes are popular for a reason. So I'm wondering if there's any sort of tropes you haven't written yet that you're hoping to, or maybe if there's one that you avoid at all costs.
I definitely avoid Secret Baby. Yeah. I've written one that's not out yet that I'm really excited about that I would love to explore again, and that's Brother's Best Friend. That's coming out next year. And I love second chance romance. I have one in my anthology, but I haven't written it full length yet, and so I definitely plan to do that.
Nice.
I don't really think this is a trope, but I want to write a romance where the two people have known each other for like a long time. They might not have been in love, like it doesn't have to be a second chance romance, but they've known each other for a long time. They could be friends, they could be rivals, and then they just like slowly fall in love when they don't expect it. Because I think so far in all my adult novels, the two people like they've just met and then, the relationship begins to develop. I really want to write something where they have backstory, where they have history. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Really
call
good.
that slow burn friends to lovers, maybe.
Mhm.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Very slow burn.
Yeah, slow burns and second chance are like some of the ones that can be the best, but I feel like they're probably also the hardest to write.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a writer, but I feel like it would be extremely difficult because you have to make sure to capture all that history
Yeah.
and really, really build it up, but also make sure that everyone's still rooting for them. Like you can't make it too bad, you know?
I think I struggle with slow burn. Like I get to the stuff too fast for that. So that would be a challenge for me, but I like to read it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you guys have a certain approach of when you're writing your romances, of like how you try to keep it fresh, or if you have like what's a Taj, key thing you always include in your stories, or if it's a Kyla book, it's always going to have this, how do you make sure that your books are standing out in, a world of so many books?
Yeah. I guess I don't even really think about trying to stand out. The
You're like, I just do. It's
I
fine.
just do it and we'll see what happens, But for me, I really am trying to, my goals are, there's always going to be food. So that's a thing for sure. But I think I'm always trying to come from a place of not centering trauma, not centering toxicity, and always trying to show, especially as I'm writing Black romance specifically, I'm trying to show Black excellence, Black joy, Black love. And I feel like there are a lot of times are these assumptions that we can't have all three of those things. And so just trying to model that and demonstrate some things that I get to witness every day, but in book form, so that it feels like a little bit more of an escape.
And you succeed very well at doing that. You do a great job.
I think like Taj, I don't really think too much about it. I feel like the more I think about it, the more like artificial it might come out.
Yeah.
So, but I think I do like writing opposites attract dynamics, like where the guy and the girl, they're just coming from very different backgrounds, they have different personalities. I think that creates a really interesting dynamic.
I would say, Kyla, too, I don't know, maybe it's not intentional or maybe it's just who you are, so it bleeds out on the page. All of your characters are extremely intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
So all of your main characters
I
are
never
always
thought about it like that.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's something I've noticed since, reading both of your books. But and you also have a good way of kind of tying together some of your stories. Like I've noticed you put, I don't know if it's something you're going to continue doing, but you mentioned like the same magazine between the two and things like that. So I'm like, oh, it's the same world a little bit. If you've read both.
Yeah, it's like a little Easter egg.
Yeah. So I love that. It's really cool.
Fun fact. I was Kyla's mentor for her first book.
Really?
I knew that you didn't know that, but when you scheduled us for this, I was like, I wonder if she knows. I don't think she does.
No, I just love you both.
But yeah, no,
when should I bring that up?
I know, like
cool.
we got to work together on the Fraud Squad. She was in Pitch Wars, and I was one of the mentors that year. And I just fell in love with the story and just knew like I wanted to help however I could. And so I've been very proudly watching Kyla's ascension ever since.
Thank you.
Aww. This is so cool. Like the romance world is so small.
From the very beginning.
Yeah.
Everyone is so connected. That's so cool. And I'm glad that you guys still have a good relationship where this could have been really awkward.
Oh. It's no, it's really cool to see, like I think especially, as you kind of get into this profession, like you connect with so many authors and, sometimes you might be a little bit ahead of where someone else is. And any way that you can help, like I think there's something to be learned on both ends of that. And so it's valuable, but also, this is a community, and if you act like a piece of the community, then you build more community. And so that's always important to me.
I'm sure as you're in an aspiring writer status and you're not, yet published, it probably feels extremely daunting because, everyone has agents and these people in their corners and connections, and you're at home writing, like you're not in places meeting these people. So everything right now pretty much is virtual, and it's hard to, get those connections and figure out exactly how to do it and what are the steps and how do you get published and how do you meet those people. So it's really cool that you guys have found pitch wars and things like that to get yourselves out there, and that you've made those connections and you're also fulfilling them now to people that are, in beginner stages.
Yeah. during parts of our mentorship, you were in Asia, and we were dealing with the time difference and everything, and meeting virtually to go over notes and all the things, but it works, and I think, for folks that are looking for, critique partners, for mentors and things like that, there are definitely ways to forge those and make it work. It's just a matter of finding the right people to do it with.
That's cool. We're kind of touching on a little bit of emotions and vulnerability here. I'd like to discuss how you make sure your characters have those same types of emotions. I feel like as both of you are just speaking out loud, like it's coming out of your own selves. So maybe it's just very natural, but that's one thing I really enjoy with both of your books is the characters feel like real people. And especially for both of you, I've listened to some of them on audio as well. And I feel like it really comes through in audio. Like you just feel like your friend is telling you like the story about their life, because it's not just like, here are the things that are happening. It's like, here are the things that are happening, but this is why I feel this way about it. So I'm curious to know, like, maybe you have a process of being like, all right, we need to make sure this emotion gets across, or this type of thing.
Yeah. I think about what the character's strengths are, and then I try to think about, how can I exploit that as a weakness? And for Maggie, in my first book, Savvy Sheldon Feels Good as Hell, Maggie is this loud and proud person. She says everything with her full chest. She doesn't second guess anything. She owns who she is and what size she is and everything. In this story, she's all of those things. And you wouldn't expect that her vulnerability is that when it comes to relationships and having to make those kinds of choices, that's when she gets really indecisive. She can be decisive about everything else, but she really second guesses herself when it comes to what she should do about Garrett. And it's funny because I did it on purpose, and I really pushed on that. And so I have some readers in my DMs like, man, you made me want to really choke her so that she can make this decision. And I'm like, yes, mission accomplished, because I want people to get frustrated with her indecisiveness here. But it's so different from what everybody's used to from her that it felt right to do it that way.
Mm-hmm. I think that feels very true to like a real friends to lovers situation, though. Like if they've been friends for that long and they have that much history, it would be extremely terrifying to like not want to mess that up. And I feel like there would be a lot of hemming and hawing behind the scenes, trying to figure out, do I feel enough of this feeling that's not going to go away where I'm going to make that step or not,
Right.
Well, it's very natural.
I think for my characters, I draw a lot of inspiration from things I've personally gone through. So even though, it's not like a carbon copy of my real life, but I think in a lot of ways, there are many experiences and many emotions that are very universal. So when I'm able to draw on what I've gone through, I think that just lends a little bit more genuineness to how my characters are feeling. So for instance, in Valley Verified, my main character, Zoe, she experiences a very rude shock when she lands in Silicon Valley. A lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of insecurities. And that's how I felt when I switched from my fashion career to working in tech right now in Silicon Valley. And, I think sometimes in books, the characters feel really big emotions, and they're kind of the same as small emotions. So as an example, like in Valley Verified, Zoe gets embarrassed very publicly And I think not a lot of us would ever go through something like that on that scale. But I remember when I was writing that scene, I just suddenly remember that one time in high school when I saw this guy waving at me, and then I waved back, and it turns out that he was waving at the girl behind me. And that flush of embarrassment, like I still remember it to this day. So I just took that and kind of blew it up a little bit more into how Zoe was feeling. But it was grounded in something small and real that I've experienced.
It's so funny because that's the opening scene of my book too.
It's true though. Like that's one of the beauties I think so much of romance, and people that like don't read romance don't understand, is that there's so much real emotion. They're like, oh, it's just fluff, or it's just porn, or well, it's this or that. And you're like, no, it's actually really complex characters, and you like see these situations and feelings they're going through, and you relate to it, and it's important and it's special. And you also, I don't know, I think I have gained a lot of empathy through reading romance, of seeing like how other people feel about different types of situations that maybe I haven't gone through or I wouldn't approach in the same way. So
yeah, I think that's so accurate because it's writing characters that feel three-dimensional. And so you're not just dealing with the romance itself, but you're also dealing with their feelings when it comes to maybe family or, being alone or, like whatever's going on with their friends. And sometimes they're going through different conflicts that have to do with the romance, and then other ones that are external. And how do they navigate all of these things at the same time, as opposed to just being singularly focused? And I think a lot of times the folks that are really critical of romance, aren't recognizing that. And so they just kind of, because they're only viewing it from one piece and not really taking into account the different ways that, these emotions and these arcs are happening and the characters are developing, I think they miss a lot of the beauty of romance and the complexity of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, and mic drop. That's so good, Josh. I could listen to you talk all day.
Oh.
All right, we have reached to the point of our second game here. So this is just a quick kind of this or that. You choose one of the options. And I really like these kind of silly games because I think it just shows more of your personality. I found that the more that I follow authors and I get to see them as people, I want to read their books even more. So I feel like it really just shows a little bit who you are. So some of them are kind of book related and some of them are just personality and fun. But our first one is plotter or pantser?
Plotter.
Definitely plotter. Capricorn plotter.
I was wondering because you specifically mentioned, I think, someone being a Capricorn in one of your books, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, is she a Capricorn? Because I feel like that was the first time you had mentioned any one sign. And I was like,
Oh, heavy on the Capricorn.
That's so funny. And that, of course, if you haven't heard those terms, it's just referring to their style of writing. So a plotter, they're planning things out and, they have their own process of how they plot out the story before they write it down. And a pantser, it means by the seat of your pants. So that, whatever that means to that particular person. Fake dating or marriage of convenience?
Fake dating.
Marriage of convenience.
Ooh, okay. Slow burn or insta love?
Slow burn.
Yeah, I think I agree there.
All right, my nerd is coming out on this one. Marvel or DC?
Ooh, Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel.
Okay, good. I was like, we can continue the stream. This is rough. 'Tis the season. So pumpkin spice latte, love it or leave it?
Leave it.
Yeah, leave it.
I will say they did have the pumpkin cold foam over a chai, and that was amazing.
I was gonna say, if I can put an asterisk on that, anything with like the pumpkin cold foam, but not an actual PSL, can't handle them. They're too much. Beach read or cozy fireside read?
Beach read.
I like both. It's really hard to choose on that. I mean, I love to be near the water, so I'd probably choose that. But in my mind, I'm like in the evenings, and you go back and you read by the fire.
Mm-hmm.
You get both.
Writing in silence or with a playlist?
Neither. I like background noise. So I like writing in public, but it's not like music, it's just like people talking and moving, and then it just blends into white noise in my head.
I like noise. I play action movies that I've seen before.
Oh.
It's very strange, but it works for me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't really feel like that comes through, but like
yeah, like literally it'll be like old franchises like Die Hard or Fast and the Furious or something like that, or Marvel movies. I just something about the action sequences, but also they're movies I've watched 100 times, so it's not gonna like pull me in to the point where I'm distracted. But I love having the noise. I like writing in public, but I write a lot of sex scenes, and then I get flustered in public, and that's problematic. So
I'm just like imagining you writing from home now, and there's just like John Wick in the background, and it's just like,
honestly, like lately I've been watching, what was it called? Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him. I haven't seen him yet. I have made my way up to like Fast and Furious 5, and I was like, all right, whew, that's a lot.
There are a lot of them, yeah. But that one in particular, it's completely not believable. Yeah. But I think that's what I enjoy about it, because I'm also like a Meg fan with Jason Statham, but it's because I love Jason Statham, really. But it's nothing about it's believable, but the corniness of it, like I'm really into it for some reason.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Kyla, have you ever tried one of those like ambience rooms on YouTube where like people are like in a library or in a coffee shop, so that like
I have, and I really like those, like those ASMR playlists.
Yeah, I have some of those too. Yeah, those are great.
I find it nice because you get like the right kind of background noise, but like I'm very distractible, so I've tried to like read in public, and anytime like someone walks in the door, I'm gonna look at who you are. Like I can't not look. I'm very nosy, so like I need the balance. So I like you.
But people watching is important, like
I was writing, but I'm supposed
to be it's research. That's right. You never know who's gonna get a character based off of them when they walk in the room.
I'm gonna start walking in way more rooms. I was kidding. Inspire someone eventually. All right, let me pick a couple more out of here. Do you prefer a first person POV or third person POV?
Third.
Yeah, third.
Okay. Nice. In your own life, do you prefer to be dressed to impress or comfort is key?
Comfort is key.
Yeah.
That surprises me because every time I've like seen you guys, but I guess it's like our public persona, it's like you always are dressed to impress, but you both dress extremely well. So I'm curious.
But to be fair, at Steamy Lit, every dress that I wore was a maxi dress, and to me, that's comfort.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Dresses are nice for that too, because you don't really actually have to think it out that much.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then you look really put together.
Exactly. It's total strategy on my part, because I'm like, I want to be comfortable but look cute. So how can I achieve that easiest? Maxi dress, done.
All right, 2 more. Pride and Prejudice or Twilight?
Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah,
2005 specifically.
I figured. This one is funny because I wrote it down before, obviously, we've started this conversation, but I wrote down billionaire boyfriend or brother's best friend, and both have already came up, so now I really need to know.
I don't know. This is hard. I think 1 year ago I would have said billionaire boyfriend, but now I would say brother's best friend. I think I'm just in the mood for something like cozier and more intimate, and not like flashy jewels or helicopters or anything.
Yeah. One, I love the aspect about brother's best friend that it sometimes feels like it's forbidden, and there are these boundaries that you have to cross. Where with billionaire, it's kind of limitless, and so that creates different dynamics, but the secrecy and everything of brother's best friend is something that I really love.
It has a good payoff too, because like when it works out, like you're part of the fam. So you're like, yes,
exactly.
Got to get everyone on board. All right. So one thing, of course, I mentioned I saw Taj at Steamy Lit, and this was a big conversation there. And I want to make sure that I'm carrying these types of conversations over to my own platforms as well. Diversity in romance specifically is very crucial. I'm wondering on how you guys approach diversity in your own romances. And I'm sure this is also just something that's very natural for you guys, but it might be a very obvious answer. But how do you make sure that you're approaching writing these diverse characters and ensuring that the representation itself is both meaningful and also respectful?
You want to go first, Kyla?
Yeah. I don't think too hard about it. I just write characters based on people that I know in a way. And so I think that authenticity comes true. And, I think I just want to see more romances starring Asian characters because I feel like for the longest time that wasn't really available to me. Growing up, I think a lot of the books I read with Asian main characters, they were very family focused, which is great and all, but I just never saw people like myself as being deserving of like a really joyful, vibrant romance. Like, growing up reading Sweet Valley, I always thought that those kind of crushes and whatnot were reserved for like white characters with blonde hair and blue eyes. And so when I first started reading books with people like, with people that I could relate to, with people that looked like me, and then I started writing about them, I think that just kind of like opened up a new world for me, as corny as that sounds.
Not at all.
Not corny at all. For me, there's a lot of ways I could attack that question. For me, I really am intentional in some ways. Like with my main characters, I always have a Black love interest. But for my main character, I've kind of explored a bit because I'm multiracial. So I have had characters that are Black and Thai. I've had characters that are Black and Filipino. I've had characters that are just Black. My next character that's coming out through Mira, my publisher, she actually gets to be Black, Thai, and Filipino, which, we don't see things like that because sometimes publishers kind of push us to choose, and we don't get to show characters necessarily that hit all of the different intersections that we do. And so I've been trying to like slowly peel that back and push the envelope, because to me, like, the importance of representation is being able to show all those different iterations and intersections. And so that's the goal through the different stories that I'm telling.
It's interesting to hear from like the reader side, because I'm not on that side, that like the publishers are even kind of strong arming you into saying, no, your character should just be this one thing, or that's too much. And, giving feedback on something as important as identity is wild.
But it happens all the time, even just from the querying standpoint. When someone's looking for an agent, I've had feedback where it's not believable that there's so much identity in a particular character, or that, with Savvy is dealing with a crisis of confidence because she's dumped for reasons that have to do with, being a workaholic, but also with her body. And one of the stronger things of feedback that I received was, it's not realistic that a woman would fixate on her weight. And I was like, what
have you never spoken to a woman?
That has got to be said by a man.
It was not.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want that self-confidence. Jesus.
I know, right? I was like, you must have never had anything affect you in that way. But that's, no. I don't even think that's realistic, You have to have had a girlfriend at least who has had, a moment where she at least questions something about herself. And to me, that's one of the most relatable things that we as women share. But even then, those are things that, we can be told they're not believable, that we either have to educate people on our backgrounds or do certain things that kind of highlight and teach people, when really, if we're writing the characters as they are, people can learn cultural clues as they read, as opposed to us having to hand feed it to people.
Yeah, you don't need a giant paragraph at the beginning listing all these attributes about the particular person. I mean, you don't find out all of those things about a person when you first meet them anyways. Like no one gives you a checklist of, these are my parents and they're from here and I also went through this, but I feel this way about this thing,
Yeah.
So
I mean, if they do that, then it's like kind of red flag territory, right?
Yeah, it's a little much. So this might kind of tie into this same question here, but I have been very aggravated by threads the last couple of months. It can be really fun. And they're also paying me sometimes, so I don't completely hate it. But I noticed that it is very much like Twitter, where you only have a small amount of text. And so people pick a hot button topic to get some engagement going. And it's just frustrating. And I feel like I've seen a lot of like hot takes from readers that I wouldn't expect, or people I was following on Instagram. And I'm like, oh, you're not who I thought you were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a lot of feelings about things every time I open that app. And I'm curious if there's one thing that you could do away with, that you experience or deal with in the romance book industry, what would it be and why? Or you can list a couple if you've got a few. But for example, mine would be every time I mention anything about romance or romance comes up as me being the reader, people are like, oh, so you read porn or you have those porn books. I'm just like, like my palms are sweating. Like I get so aggravated by that statement because tell me you've never read a romance book without telling me, it's so much more to that. And also what's wrong with that? Anyways, that's mine. Now that I'm yelling at you guys.
I think mine would be the debate about whether a book can be considered romance if it doesn't have a happily ever after. I feel like that debate surfaces like every 3 months and it's the same talking points, the same discussion. And I'm like, well, if we still haven't agreed on this at this point, it's like, okay.
Yeah. I think mine is this notion now that a book is only marketable if the person is viral on TikTok. It drives me insane because that's not realistic for most of the authors that are out there. We definitely have authors who have never had a social media platform and they sell just fine. And so I think that we, especially in the publishing industry, have to start thinking more about the ways that, we can change marketing to really encompass more, because we already know that these algorithms are not necessarily built in favor of people of color. And the ways that we can get these books out there is to actually make more efforts and not just rely on the authors to do it themselves.
It's wild to see like how much money publishers make and how they don't allocate for marketing. As someone who has like worked in marketing for years, and I briefly even worked on that side of it, it's just the money is allocated in very strange ways. And then, yes, they demand the authors to be, marketing their own book constantly. And I feel like that is just so like ass backwards, because like we want your writers and that's your strength and your talents. And I, as a reader, would rather have you just write more so I could read more, because that's what you're good at. And I mean, some people, of course, have multiple strengths and can do both. And if they can, that's on them. But it's wild to see that like that's the norm now. That's this new expectation. It's like you're not getting paid extra to do that. It's taking away time from your writing as well. And a lot of writers are very introverted. You write at home, and like that's not something you really want to do, is like have to, even myself, like being a content creator, I don't always want to have to like get ready and put on makeup and like be on camera. Like there's days on end where I just don't want to do that. So
yeah. Funny story. A few of us here in the DC area were interviewed to potentially, audition for sort of like a kind of like Real Housewives kind of show, but it was like the romance authors of DC.
Okay.
And so like what was really funny about it, we did these interviews and we talked to, the casting director and all this stuff. And I was like, I really don't know how this is going to work for you. And she said, why? And I said, because we're introverts and most of us don't like to leave our house. Like, how are you going to do this? Like, are you going to send us on some like writing retreat where we have to be in close quarters with each other? Because otherwise, like, we're in the middle of a pandemic at the same time. Like, we're on Zoom together. Like, are you going to just like record us like as we're recording on Zoom? Like, what's
like Big Brother, or is this like a hype house situation?
Right.
Like, what's happening?
It's just a bunch of like in your home confessionals because nobody is with anybody else. So like, you know, how is this going to work? And I think they ended up canning it for that reason, because they were like, you know what, like none of them, they all work from home. Like, how do we do it?
Yeah, I can't really see how that would play out.
I think writers would really probably enjoy it because it's hilarious how little we like decide to leave our homes. But at the same time, you know, like for anybody that's not in this world, they'd be like, this is the most boring show ever.
Yeah, like all they do is sit on their couch and
right.
use their computer.
Yeah, and sometimes they move from the couch to the bed to the floor with the computer, but they just still have, like, I literally do that, and then I also take my computer to my local wine bar, and I'm still sitting there with my computer. Like, it's just, that's my life now.
I mean, I would still watch the show, but I feel like it might not be like the most thrilling, especially if you're pitching it as like a Real Housewife. I'm like, I don't think like authors are also willing to start this kind of drama with each other for the sake of a story. I feel like that's stressful.
It's super stressful. And honestly, like, if you think about it kind of like as almost like an ASMR cozy show, like there'd be some people that'd be into that because they're like, oh, it's like slow pace, it's chill. Mm-hmm. I'm into it, you know, like, but for everybody else, they're like, they don't do anything. They just sit there and write. They don't even talk to us.
If you could infuse some sort of like Great British Bake Off energy into it, there we go.
There you go. That could be fun.
All right, so we're getting close to the end of the hour here, and I want to make sure to, you know, honor the time that you've given me in this hour here. So I have 2 final questions that I'll wrap it up with here. But one thing I want to ask is, so at many author events, we're always discussing what's next. Like, I feel like, I don't know, maybe this is just because I don't like being asked these types of questions, but like, I noticed that we don't always get time to talk about like the past achievements and how far you've came already. And you're getting all of this pressure from the outside world to be like, what are you writing next? How are we going to make this a bestseller? How are we going to replicate this again? How are we going to do that? You know, make this much more money this time. So I want to kind of rewind the clock a little bit and look back. And I'm wondering if there's a specific moment you've had in your author journey thus far that made you just kind of feel like, damn, I made it a little, like, wow, I'm a published author, or wow, like this connected with readers, or something that just stands out to you in your memory of being an author so far.
I think the very first time a reader DM'd me and said that she really enjoyed my book, I think that was when I was like, wow, like there are real people out there reading my book. And that was an awesome feeling. But I think even just doing this with Taj, because Taj is one of the very, very few people in the writing and publishing industry whom I knew before I ever got an agent or a book contract. Yeah. Like, she was there from the very beginning. And then now we're doing this live stream together. And it's been like, what, almost 3 years? And it's like, wow, in the past 3 years, like the book that I worked on with Taj, like, it's come out. I've had other books come out or coming out. And it's like, yeah, like, I guess I have come pretty far from where I used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a full circle moment for sure. Yeah.
It's like interesting knowing your history now too, and like knowing about the mentorship, that like I invited you guys to share the same space on the same level too. You know what I mean? Like, where you're no longer in that necessarily like same dynamic, where you've actually grown as well, Kyla, to become, you know, this published author with multiple works out in the wild, and readers are reading them and loving them, and now you guys are sharing the same stage. You know, it's really cool.
Yeah, I was her mentor, but now we're peers, and it's a really cool thing to watch Kyla, you know, her success and all of the different ways that, you know, she's been able to be out there. It's really cool. Yeah.
Question, and I love it. I love women.
I love it. Yeah, no. In terms of your question, I think I had this moment at Winter Institute last year, right before Azora came out. I was invited to be a part of the keynote panel, and I was totally feeling like an imposter because I'm on a panel with Chloe Gong and like Nana Kwame Mbaya Renya and like Andrew Joseph White. And I'm just like, these people are all in the New York Times or are already bestsellers. And I'm like, why am I here? Like, I'm just this random romance author that gets to be on this panel with these folks. And there were over 1,200 people in the room. And right before it, I got to sign over 300 copies of my book for them to like give out to. And I was just like, what is this? You know, like it doesn't feel real. But at the same time, like sitting on that panel with them, and feeling like even they had interest in what I had to say, it was the moment that I will never forget.
Mm-hmm. I hope that's like a feeling that you're able to like take with you too, to like other events. It's like, wow, like I deserve to be here too, you know, because you do, and you write wonderful books. So
yeah,
it's really cool.
It is. And I think there's something validating about it. You know, I think this year, I've been a part of like 2 different keynote things, and I'm just kind of like, these people keep inviting me to be. I don't understand why they value my opinion at all. But at the same time, like it does tell you like people do care about what you have to say, and the stories that you're telling are relevant, and that's really important, especially when you're not always sure about that. You know, like it helps to have that because this is such an introverted kind of business, and you are kind of isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So having that from your peers, it does mean a lot.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about that, how like there's such a stark difference of writing at home and being so isolated to going to like these events, and maybe there's hundreds of people, or you're signing so many books or meeting authors or readers for hours on end, and that's got to be just like such an extreme, but like rewarding but overwhelming as well.
Yeah, peopling on that level, like Steamy Lit, I love it, and it's so important. But by the end of it, I am exhausted. You know, like having those 4-hour time blocks, and what is it, like 1,300 readers there, and it's amazing to be able to be immersed in a place where everybody loves romance.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like there's so many people, and you're having to be on for so long, and as introverts, like that drains you a bit, or a lot. And so by the end of the day, I know, like, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to DoorDash and stay in my room, but thank you guys. Have a good night, you know? But it's, I look forward to it every year. I love it.
It's so rewarding. It's so worth it, but definitely like the social energy is extremely depleted afterwards. Like me, even as a reader, I was like, I want to go home. Like I met too many people. They were all lovely and I enjoyed it, but now I just need to not talk to anyone for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
So every single author I've ever met, I always leave this as my closing question because as I mentioned, I'm not a writer, but of course I'm also a reader, and you're readers as well. So I like to know what you guys read. So what do you recommend? It could be also in the romance space, but maybe some books that really just stand out to you, or authors in particular. And I usually get off stream and immediately open my Libby app and request whatever you guys say. So do with that power as you will.
Okay, wait. Do these suggestions have to be romance novels or just any
It's
genre?
up to you. Just
Okay.
whatever you're feeling in your heart of hearts in this moment works for me.
Okay, so I just got back from Asia and I'm super jet lagged. And I was up till 4 a.m. reading books, but they were both thrillers, like murder thrillers. So I think the first one was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, I want to say. And then the second one is a book called The Yacht. And it's about a bunch of people stuck on a boat and they drift out to sea. And I was just reading both of them at night in bed. And by the time I was done with them, like my heart was racing and I had to go use the bathroom. And I swear, like I saw phantoms in every shadow. So yeah, like I would recommend those just because those were actually really immersive and good thrillers. But whenever I'm craving something light and sweet, I turn to Sophie Kinsella's books. She wrote Confessions of a Shopaholic, and I've just loved all her books. They're very light, fluffy, but sometimes that's just what you need.
Very comforting. I always say like people call like romance their palate cleanser, and I get mad, but I call thrillers my palate cleanser because I read so much romance. I was like, after reading about like 8 people falling in love back to back, then I'm like, all right, someone needs to get murdered, and I pick up a thriller, and I go back to my romance. So that's my palate cleanser.
I love that. I love that for you. This year, I feel like I've read a few really good things. Cherish Reed just had a book come out called Jewel Me Twice. And it's this kind of fast-paced heist romance. It's an ensemble, so there's like a sub-romance also for other people that are in the group. But it's really, really sexy and fun, and it kind of traverses different parts of Europe. I just read Regina Black's next book that isn't out yet, and it's so
I'm jealous.
Okay, Taj.
Like I can't even, like, all I'll say is Black Country, and it is everything. So good. And then I also read one that isn't romance. It's called The Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society. It's by Christine Estima. She is incredible at what she does, and it's basically kind of this collection of women kind of navigating a very, very hard time, and they're brave and they are bold in different ways in the face of danger and, you know, just kind of human atrocities and things in our history. And so it's really gorgeously written. Highly recommend.
I like how we have like so much variety here. This is cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here. I always say goodbye for now, not forever, because you're definitely not rid of me now. I'm so honored that you spent this hour with me and getting to like rebond with each other too. Like, what a fun little surprise for everyone. But both of you write very incredible books that are extremely important. So just thank you for putting those out into the world and helping readers feel seen and represented, because it's very important, and they're beautiful books that I will be championing forevermore. So just thank you for your time and for what you do. I appreciate you both so very much.
Thank you for what you do and for having us on the show. Like, this was so fun. I love your questions. I love the games, and this is just such a great vibe.
Agreed.
Okay, I'm awkward now. All right, not about me, but thank you. I appreciate it very much, and I will be seeing you guys online. And friendly reminder to everyone, all the links are down below of where to buy their books, but also if you're requesting them from the library, also make sure to add them to your want to read shelves on Goodreads and Storygraph, because that's extremely important. And I've linked both their Instagrams and their TikToks down below. You should follow them there as well, because as we've discussed, that's very important for publishers for some reason. So follow them online and engage with their content there as well. And we will see you guys all on the interwebs.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks. Bye.